Hello and welcome to BST Weekly. My name's Joey Kane and today I'm by myself. I'm doing it alone. You're in for an absolute treat because who knows where this could take us. There's no one here to stop me from going on any wily tangent, so stick with us. It's going to be a really great episode. Today we're going to have a look at some of the early NAB Cup results from week one, which there was a few good games. NAB Cup's obviously a bit wishy-washy in terms of skills. There's still obviously a lot of development to go into the guys heading into the season, and nowhere near finals football or even regular season football. But it's good just to get a bit of a glimpse at some of the up-and-coming players and some of the new tactics, and to see where some of the teams are at in terms of where they're at in terms of development in tactics, and see if we can identify some obvious game structures and game plans. But we're going to get straight into it and have a look at that, and then we're going to have a look at some of next week's matches a bit later on, and a few opinions on some of the news stories during the week. But first things first, let's have a look at the NAB Cup from the week gone. Friday night is when it happened. The three teams, Essendon, Bulldogs and Collingwood, we all couldn't wait to get stuck into a bit of footy again. And the only thing about it though is I'm not sure that I really like the three-team format about it. Let us know. Hit us up on Facebook or Twitter and tell us what you think about the three-game format, the three-team format. But I think if we had a shorter season where we played each team once and a longer NAB Cup series with a bigger prize at the end of it, that'd be a much better way to structure the whole thing. But I understand that due to the broadcast rights that can't really happen right now. But let us know, Facebook and Twitter, what you think of the three-team format. But the first game we saw, Essendon versus the Bulldogs. The Bombers obviously having a real tough time coming out of what was a really bad 10 days to them leading up to it, in terms of they had the drug scandal, and it's rocked the footy club, rocked the football world, rocked the Australian sporting landscape in general. But it was really interesting to see if they'd bind together and come out really strong and looking to absolutely whack their opposition, or whether it would really affect their on-field performance and make them fall apart. But what we saw, the final scores there, Essendon 45 to the Bulldogs 19. So, look, I don't know if we can read too much into these results, because it really is, the skills are subpar and it's tough to look into. But for mine, the Dons looked pretty good in that first game, and I think they'd just be really, really happy to get back out the park and playing football. There was a rousing reception from the Bomber faithful when they ran out, which was really good to see, especially considering that the crowd wasn't overly massive, but they made a lot of noise at the tunnel there where they came out, and it was great to see. Great to have footy back. I'm not too sure that we can say too much more about that game, because it was certainly not one for the memory bank. But we'll have a look at some of the footage here now. Have a look at Big Bellchambers here, taking a really strong grab and then going back and slotting what's a really important goal for his confidence, and he'll need to have a big year for the Bombers this year if they're going to do anything in September. We move on to the Dogs, and Sean Higgins here. Lovely little takeaway, gets the advantage and slots a 9-pointer, but he's going to have to step up this year, Sean Higgins, because he is going to have to be one of the young guys who push through and become elite and lead this club forward, and if he doesn't, it's going to be a very tough year for them. Cole Hardingham here with a lovely, nice little 9-pointer. But really, guys, that's about it in terms of highlights. As we move on to what was a real low light of the night, we see here Michael Hurley giving Cooney a little cheap shot. Got off that in terms of it wasn't enough force to warrant a suspension. So, sort of not one for the memory bank, that's for sure, but Essendon would be really happy to get out with a win, and the Bulldogs were somewhat competitive, and I think they could take some solace in that. But the second game up, Western Bulldogs and Collingwood, again, this wasn't one that you'd hang on to in the memory bank, but the Bulldogs put in an okay showing. I thought Collingwood dominated. Final scores there, Bulldogs 29, Collingwood 47. It was a game that sort of lacked a lot of skills and defensive pressure, and let's have a look at the highlights and we'll walk through it. Someone who did look really good for the Pies was Quinton Lynch. But we'll get into that in a moment as we see Jamie Elliott here kicking a really nice little snap from the boundary, which is a real highlight of the match. He looked really good as well, by the way, Jamie Elliott. He has big plans. I'm sure he's in Collingwood's future plans, I should say. But we see here Brent McCaffrey coming back, and lovely little goal. He'll be loving being back and playing footy. And the Pies, he'll be a walk-up starter for the Collingwood because he played in that premiership team, and he's a really, really solid player. But as I said, the big cue stick, slotting through his first goal in a Magpies jumper, and the Collingwood faithful absolutely love to see that. But again, Collingwood ran out pretty easy winners in the end, and I don't think either side. I think it's a nice little tune-up for the season proper. But the big one, the main game of the night, really. Before we move on to that, I suppose I'll just have a quick word on the Bulldogs and say that they wanted to come out and be competitive. I think they were in patches, but I think they really, really struggled getting the ball into their forward line, and some of their big key forwards, such as Jones and others, really need to take a step up. I'm not sure they can. I think they're in big trouble, the Dogs, this year in terms of getting the ball into their forward line. I think the midfielders did okay, but they got so many small midfielders as well. They seemed like they didn't want to kick it forward. They seemed like they were worried, and it'd just be a turnover if they did. So instead of doing that, they sort of mucked around with it in the middle and didn't go direct and forward and hit guys leading up. But we watch that one with interest because Brendan McCartney knows what he's doing, and I'm sure he'll end up getting that forward line functional in time. And it is just their first couple of games for the year. So the big one though, Collingwood Essendon, third game of the night, and one with the most controversy as always. The final score there, Collingwood 31, and obviously the Bombers 29. So that was a 2-point game, but it wasn't always so close. It was absolutely topsy-turvy. The Pies were on top, and then the Bombers got way out, and then the Pies come roaring back in the last couple of minutes, and as we'll see in a second, a really controversial decision right at the death there. But let's have a look at some of the footage. As you can see, this is the last minute or so of action. Collingwood with the ball. They kick it long in towards Travis Cloke in the goal square, but have a look at this free kick decision. Make your own mind up at home, but for mine, not really there, to be honest. I think, as you can see in slow-mo, Travis Cloke is a big 100-kilo plus man, and that type of shove is not going to make him fall forward with that much force. They definitely brought in a rule for flopping for a reason, and I think in this case, it certainly should be looked at. Not a free kick in my book. However, I'm sure that the Pies fans will disagree with me, but let us know what you think at home on Facebook or Twitter. Hit us up and see if you thought that was a free or not. But for mine, absolutely not there. Not that it's that big a deal because it is just NAB Cup. It doesn't really mean anything. So great hit up for those two clubs, and a bit of experience for some of the younger guys. What wasn't in that footage there was the Essendon had a shot at goal after the siren to win it, but didn't get anywhere near it. So that was the most controversial decision. That free kick in the goal square, not there for mine, but we'll push on to the next night of games, which was really, really interesting as well. That had three teams in the group, West Coast Eagles, Fremantle, and the Geelong Cats, and that was over in Perth. So good for the Perth fans to get an early treat over there. West Coast Eagles, Geelong, the first game up, obviously, and that ended up being another close one, another 2-point game. West Coast Eagles 47, Geelong 49. Now, for mine, this was a really, really interesting game. Some of the players, some of the beards especially, Chris Maston and I think Will Schofield for the Eagles. Sensational stuff going on there. But look, not too much can be said about it. We'll have a look at the highlights here. How about Josh Caddy? Let's have a look here. The first kick, first goal with the new club, the Geelong Cats, obviously coming from the Gold Coast Suns. This is what NAB Cup's about. We have a look at our youngsters and see how they fit into the lineup. Good on you, Josh Caddy. His disposal's been a bit iffy at times, but he can definitely win the ball, so he should have a future there. The big pod, who was played in defence some of this game, which was pretty interesting to see. It looks like the Cats hierarchy are going to try and move him down into the back line, which he's a really good reader of the play, and he's been around, he knows the score. But Stokesy here, a bit of a scare on his ankle as we see him being run off. But just back to Pod, Really, really good move for mine, and I think it'll work for them. But another guy who's coming off injury, Mark Lacroix. Have a look at this kick here. That's just sensational stuff by the Frenchman. One of our favourites here at BST Weekly. But he was really good, and good to see him back with a West Coast Eagles jumper on, running around the park. But a really good game, really close game, and depending on the severity of Stokes' injury, I think both sides will be pretty happy with that hit out. It was a really solid one between two teams who will no doubt feature in September. But the next game over there was between Fremantle and Geelong. This one not as close, 3 goals in it. Fremantle 48 to Geelong 30. Now, this game, as you'll see in a second, was another really good hit out. It was quite surprising given that Geelong had come out and won the first game that Fremantle would win the second. I bet no one was expecting that, but Ross Lyons seemed to have done a really good job with the Freo boys. Let's have a look at some of the stuff here. Ross Lyons done a great job at Fremantle and will continue to do so. They'll continue to improve. Geelong are a good side, and at times Freo just absolutely ran riot against these guys. So some of the small forwards as well were really good, which they tend to be in NAB Cup. Small forwards do dominate. But as you can see, they absolutely had the bull by the horns at this stage. There was an incident in this game, a bit of a reprehensible one. Steve Johnson, as we know, missed the final last year, and as you can see here, a hit on Hayden Ballantyne, everybody's favourite man to hate, and he has got a week for that, which isn't really good enough in my book. Steve Johnson should have learned. He missed a final last year. Now, if he hasn't learned, he's old enough to know better. He's not good enough to miss round 1 and a final the year before. That's pathetic, Steve Johnson. Control your emotions. Keep your emotions in check. Chris Mayne, just quickly to touch on here, rolled his ankle as you saw, and hopefully he'll be all right as well. But the main talking point out of that one, the Steve Johnson incident, which, yeah, not good enough, and Geelong supporters would be devastated, I'm sure. I know it's only the first round that he misses, but not good enough. Steve Johnson, you're better than that. You got to pull your head in. I know Hayden Ballantyne gets under a lot of players' skins, but that's what he's best at. You should be alert to it. You should be aware of it, and you shouldn't bite. Anyway, not good enough. We move on to the Eagles and the Dockers, which was not the greatest spectacle. The Eagles ended up winning 40 points to 16 over the Dockers, which made it every team got out of there with a win, which was really good. The Eagles probably looked the best on the night for mine going into the season, but as we know, they've got such a good list that they will be there where the whips are cracking, and they'll be pretty happy with their hit out that they had. No real incidents for them except just a really nice little lead up into the season. The next day, Sunday, we had another 3 teams, Adelaide, Port Adelaide and St Kilda. Now, some really, really surprising results here, and it was very hot over there, 38.5 degrees I think it was, and there's been a lot of talk about the heat rule and whether we should play players in the NAB Cup at this type of heat, but for mine, it's just another obstacle in their lead up, and I think they'll actually benefit from it, having a run in that type of heat, and that'll help them in the long run. But the Crows, the first game, the Crows versus St Kilda. The Crows only managed 3 goals, 6 points, 24. St Kilda were 50 points in that game, and as we'll see with some of the footage here, it was really the St Kilda small forwards absolutely dominated. You can see here in the heat of Adelaide, the St Kilda forwards kicking goal after goal and completely dominated the Adelaide Football Club, which they wouldn't be too happy about, but it is just pre-season, so they're a great side. They wouldn't be too worried, but certainly they wouldn't like any small forwards to light it up like this against them in the future. John Cock, the mainstay of the Crows, has a long shot here and doesn't quite get there, but Bo Wilkes changed his name to Bo Meister, which I'm not 100% sure of the reason of that, but not that keen on it from a name perspective, but I'm sure he has his reasons to change his name. Very tough for the fans, though, to keep a track of, but that's okay. We see Stephen Milne here, who we said a couple of weeks ago is an elite player. This is goal of the week for mine. One grab, one touch onto his boot, snaps a goal. Lovely little finish there. Beautiful work. And Malira here, putting a nice finishing touch on what was a really nice opening for the St Kilda Football Club. As we move on to the second match of the day, which was between Port Adelaide and the Saints, which a complete reversal of form, really. Port Adelaide win a 65 to St Kilda 15, which is a complete opposite of what happened with the Saints in the first game, where they obliterated the Adelaide Football Club. Port come out and have smashed them exactly the same way. So that is unexpected from mine, and such a great stepping stone to build from for the Port Adelaide Football Club. Let's have a look here. And like a fine wine, Ollie Wines here, the highly rated youngster from the Port Adelaide Football Club, kicks a great goal. As we can see, very happy about that. He was sensational. They are looking to the future with him, with really bright thoughts. Another one here, Need, was absolutely sensational. He was putting on clinics for the Port Adelaide Footy Club. Have a look at that. That's a really strong mark. And have a look at this takeaway. He shows something really special, and it looks like he'll be a player for the future. He got to put a bit more size on, I think, but hopefully not too much. We like to see players fit and taut and running rings around opponents like he just did there. But Port Adelaide, goal after goal after goal, completely dominated the Saints in the heat. The heat could have been a factor, but I think Port were actually just better on the day, which doesn't bode well for St Kilda in the future. But really happy Port fans, I'm sure. A great win, and Schultzy here, icing the cake. Beautifully done. And that was that. Port running out winners. Surprising big winners there against the St Kilda Footy Club. And all the pressure was on there. Port Adelaide Football Club to win again in the third game, to be the one team to win both games and hopefully advance further in the NAB Cup, which I'm sure is a real aim of theirs. But just before we talk about the last game, Port Adelaide really need to make their home ground a fortress. And I think it's, we've said it before, but it's something that some of the developing teams can really hang their hat on and work towards, especially the interstate teams, making their home ground a real tough place to come, and they're really competitive at home. And Port Adelaide so far look like they are doing that against interstate clubs, but there wasn't so much fortune in the last game. They played against the Adelaide Crows, and the Crows ended up winning that one 43-27. So Adelaide getting their win of the day, and Port, they didn't look too bad in that last game either, to be fair. So not as dark days ahead, I think, for the Port Adelaide Footy Club. Adelaide, look, it's NAB Cup, and nothing to worry about, nothing to get concerned about. Same as St Kilda. You got your wins and blooded some youngsters and got some game time into their senior players, which is what the NAB Cup's about. So that's all we can say really about the first week. A lot more games in the second half of the year as we have a look here. Friday night, North, the D's and Richmond, and they'll play in their 3-game triangle. Then we move on to Saturday, where the Gold Coast Suns, Hawthorn and the Brisbane Lions will play. For mine, this could be the matchup of the round, these three teams, because Brisbane will be mad keen to prove themselves. The Gold Coast Suns have had a ripping pre-season according to all reports, and they'll be they can't wait to get stuck into it, and they're looking to win the NAB Cup, I think, as well. And the Hawks, as we know, rock solid team. They'll have the steam coming out their ears. They'll be angry after the grand final loss. I bet they can't wait to hit a few bodies and lay a few tackles. So for mine, Saturday night is the one for me. Watch out, those 3 games will be sensational. They'll be as close in the NAB Cup as we see to a regular season game in terms of intensity for mine. But the Sunday game, GWS Giants, Carlton Footy Club and the Sydney Swans, that's out at the Skoda Park out at Western Sydney. So that'll be an interesting one as well to see if, in particular, how much GWS is improved. And the Carlton game structure under a new coach in McMalthouse, see how far they've come, and see if they've indeed learnt a new structure, or if they're going to continue the way they're going. My tip is to play mix around the boundary around the boundary line. That's probably where I reckon I see them coming to fruition and using their talents. But we wait and see with that one. Sydney Swans, bit of a walk in the park, really. They've won the flag. They've started later with their pre-season training, so I don't think they'll be too revved up for this one. But we wait and see. But that brings us to an end, really. It's can't wait till the real stuff happens, round 1. But it's good the NAB Cup to have a look at some of the youngsters and see where some teams are at. Big winners for mine from the weekend so far. Essendon will be happy that footy's back. They will be loving actually playing football. So they're a big winner for mine. And another one, Port Adelaide Football Club, which I just spoke about, who really were impressive Sensational stuff from them, really, and quite happy to see those guys kick on. I'd love for the Port Adelaide Football Club to come back and establish itself as that dominant power that it used to be not so long ago. But what I'm going to leave you with here is some footage of. It pretty much sums up the whole NAB Cup, really. It's just some comical work. Mistake after mistake, turnover after turnover between the Port Adelaide and St Kilda footy clubs. Have a look, enjoy it, and remember to hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. That's at BST Weekly on Twitter. And www.facebook.com/BST Weekly is Facebook. Leave some comments. Tell us what you think about the NAB Cup, whether you like the 3-team format, the triangle format, or whether you have a different plan in mind. If you have some fancy other design, let us know. Hit us up. Tell us what you think about the clubs on the weekend and where you see them finishing. And that's it from me. You'll see us next week with our AFL show as well as our NBA and EPL show as well. We'll be back to regular viewing next week. Tim will be back sitting next to me. We'll ask him how he went on the BST Weekly business trip overseas. There'll be some stories, I'm sure. So stay tuned for that. But from me, Joey Kane, all the best. Have a look at this footage and don't forget BST Weekly.